Assalamu alaikum, fam. Hope you're doing well. So we're continuing our reading of the Federalist Papers. The very serious book for people who want to understand what was America supposed to be about, why the founders are so important, and why people who are with a more malicious intent trying to erase them from the memory of the American population. Because you'll see a lot of very, very progressive liberals and Democrats and communists and socialists who have never read these works, demonizing people like Alexander Hamilton because they were straight and white and they happened to have some slaves that worked for them. Even though many people in the past had that and were living in a new era, and even though the people who criticize Alexander Hamilton for having slaves purchase things made by slaves, economic wage slaves today, and they want to be pardoned for that, and they justify abortion and other immoral things, but they don't want you to understand or read about the principles that the founders set down. And as we continue through this book, as we've seen so much previously, we begin to see why these brilliant men, who God blessed with mind and rhetoric, were so important and are important, and why a tyrannical government would not even want you to know these people beyond their race and sexual orientation. So I will openly declare that I like the founders. I'm not ashamed of the founders, and I think they were brilliant people who God blessed, and I do not hate them. So with that being said, let's begin. From the same source, the people of America may be said to have derived a hereditary impression of danger to liberty from standing armies in times of peace. So, yeah, I mean, when he says hereditary impression, I mean handed down, right? So it was something that was put into your mind and it came there because, obviously despots, if they have a standing army in times of peace, they can, brutalize the peasants, right? Soldiers grabbing women with their breadbasket. You can totally picture it in your mind. However, I'd argue you can also picture the opposite. Gang members being scurried off the streets. Beautiful. We have so much crime now that when I read something like this, it might be better for the soldiers to be in the street, because now we wouldn't. What's better? A soldier in the street or a gangbanger who kills children and sells drugs and is causing anarchy and chaos and death and despair? Law and order through a soldier who might run the risk of oppressing us? Or no police, defunded police departments, social workers that don't have firearms, so basically useless, and gang members shooting each other regardless of how many gun laws you put, regular citizens having a more difficult time to get a gun and then can't even fight these criminals, and then corrupt Democrats, liberals, and progressives voting that if you shoot a gang member or someone like that, you will go to jail, and, the law will more side with them. So no militias, no vigilantes, nothing about the old school way of Americana where you could get rid of those people, right? You go to the wrong saloon, the men in there kick you out. Today, it's very soft on crime, very pro-criminal. I mean, really just shows you how far we've fallen. So, one also could say, in times of peace, that means not at active war, okay? But could we argue that the gang members, the cartels, they are an enemy within the borders of our nation? So we're at war with them. And we should eradicate them as much as possible, without any mercy. We should wipe them off. Otherwise, we become overrun like Mexico and El Salvador, where now those cartels have more power and more people willing to join their ranks than the side of decency. Because if we allow our politicians to become too corrupt, they don't do their job, police get bad ethics, and everything is just a free-for-all, we're not going to live in a state of peace, right? It wouldn't be a civil war, but it's a sort of criminal war against humanity. So, yes, it wouldn't be a foreign nation invading us, but still, I'd argue we are not in a time of peace, and we should have soldiers in the streets. People won't like that now. Of course, John Adams and Alexander Hamilton wouldn't like that. But I'm beyond the point of allowing so much social decay, right? We're getting tired of the riots, the looting, the burning, the chaos, the gun violence, the rappers being promoted and put all over the TV, and then people wondering why we have so much death. And I'm tired of seeing the mothers hugging each other with balloons and stuff where their kid was shot by a stray bullet from a drive-by shooting. You know, you see the news constantly of just how much crime there is, and how the Democrats, progressives, liberals, and communists make excuses for it. Oh, it's going down. They do a lot of different things to try to calm everybody down and placate us. Or say, oh, they were doing it because they want to steal bread, right? Like what AOC Bimbo says, occasional cortex AOC. So, I remember learning in class, why do people vote for authoritarians? Is because they want law and order and stability, and people don't like a bunch of chaos, right? And now I am understanding that. And who brought that upon us is the left wing has brought in too much chaos because they have to cause confusion in order to bring in their new system, balkanize the old structure, and then rebuild from it. It's very understandable when you see strategies, what they're doing, right? But that team, that side of the political spectrum, did not realize that mothers, right, don't want this sort of instability. Now, a lot of them don't have as many children. They're very pro-abortion, very pro-feminist, pro-matriarchy. They hate the patriarchy. So they have different values. So for them, destroying the structure, trying to create a new system is their goal, and the ends justify the means for them. Whereas Muslims and, religious conservatives, we have a higher order that God has given us with morality. We are not pushed by a godless, atheistic, hedonistic type of pursuit. So this armies being in the times of peace is a very, very interesting thing to really think about, right? Because you think about, we don't want it to be like China or Tiananmen Square. We don't want that. We don't want Mussolini driving tanks down, the boulevard, right? But at the same time, we don't have the moral men we used to have, or the moral women, and a lot of children are born without parents guiding them. The phones are raising them, and they're becoming extremely wild and undisciplined and criminal. So it might be better to have an army standing in a times of peace where another nation isn't attacking us, so that we can maintain order. So really think about that, okay? Like, where do you stand on it? And even if your neighborhood is safe, imagine if I took you and I dropped you into the hoods and said, okay, and then watch how your instincts would change. Would you become a better person or a worse person? How would you sleep? And how much crime would happen to you? And how would that turn your heart? And what solutions would you have? Very important things to think about. The circumstances of a revolution quickened the public sensibility on every point connected with the security of the popular rights. So look at that. So the circumstances of a revolution, they actually made people's sensibilities become more perceptive, quicker, right? And they wanted to secure your popular rights. Now, the left wing in America wants you to be silenced over just mean tweets, right? They don't want you to be able to opt out of certain things in your curriculum. They don't want you to be able to share your opinion, how you don't want drag queen story hour and other degenerate things. They don't want you to say that, hey, we don't want prostitution and all drugs legalized, right? The digital sphere has created another world that should be legislated. And this time, in the 1700s, it was different. You didn't have the internet, so they're trying to preserve our rights in the realm that they know. But now we have the raw world, now we have the digital world. And we need to have regulations for both of those and rights, because tech companies are influencing countries, and CEOs of these companies must not have that much power because we did not vote for them. So if they can censor and spew propaganda and silence their political opponents, which we know they do, and even though they go in front of Congress and they testify, still we have to regulate them, and we cannot allow Google to have a monopoly on what apps can be there, right? Because we saw what they did with taking Parler off, and we also saw what they did concerning how they demote pages and websites they don't like to the back page. So Google, acting as a sort of globalized separate entity that meddles in politics instead of just doing its job as being a search engine, we begin to see that corporations in a digital globalized era must also be put to check and beaten to the ground under each country's constitution, right? Really makes you think. Because popular rights, yes, we should be more sensible to that. And it's very potent that he brought that to our attention in his writing. And in some instances, raised the warmth of our zeal beyond the degree which consisted with due temperature of the body politic. So here, raised the warmth of our zeal beyond the degree which consisted with the due temperature of the body politic. So notice this is very good language he uses here. Warmth of our zeal. So zeal to preserve liberty, to have a healthy society with law and order and freedom, and an educated populace, and a trusted legislature, and a trusted judiciary, right? People held their politicians' feet to the flames to keep them in line, and the Constitution was obeyed. This, and having a energy of revolution. There is, a lot of like, where do we go? Who's going to be the leader? Who's right? Who's wrong? The zeal and energy, right? So in America, zeal is this patriotic zeal is like, I'll give you an example. Is almost like the jihadi energy that's talked about in Islam. It's a energy of your strength, vitality, and life within you, and you keep moving steadfastly towards it. Patriotic zeal of liberty in an Americana sense in the 17th century is very much like that, where people are cautious to preserve the Constitution, their state, and their popular rights, similar to how a Muslim would preserve their religion and obey the duties and forbid evil and enjoin what is good. So it is a different mindset for a different topic, but the word zeal, right, is something that is a momentum forward, right? Very apt point here. And when he says warmth, and then he changes it to a degree which is above the temperature of the body politic, it's like they're more like not as going forward, they're more relaxed. The temperature hasn't been turned up, because when you turn up the temperature, you raise hot tempers, right? You raise it, because if you're in the point of revolution and your people are so angry, they become hot, you see? When you're content, it's a warm, cozy, comforty feeling, right? But here he's explained that revolution will make you realize your public sensibilities, and you will strive and have zeal towards defending them against a tyrannical government or faction within your government who seeks to destroy those points. So it is very interesting, right? It's truly, I must say, he makes you think. But today we must argue, though, liberty, what does it mean now? And would it be such a bad thing to have a standing army on the streets today? We would then have to say, because now they're doing in the military They've been trying to kick out Trump supporters and screen them to have them just be loyal to Joe Biden. And they've been doing like political questioning of the troops, and this has worried people because a troop's private position on who he'd vote for is private. But now you have the woke agenda infecting our military and degrading them to the point where our soldiers are seeing drag queen performances. You can probably look that up. I'm not going to link to it. But our soldiers are watching a drag queen show instead of focusing on taking out the enemy. And Biden is the weakest leader we've ever had. And he's making our military weaker, and he's feminizing our men. There was actually a video, and some journalists wrote about how they made the troops wear high heels. You can look it up. Troops wearing high heels in America. And to see what it was like to walk in a woman's shoes. This is feminization. It's useless. No one wears heels in times of war. Wearing heels is a pompous luxury that is bad for your feet, and if someone pushes you over, you'll break your own ankle. It's not necessary for a trained killer to wear high heels. So our military and our Joint Chief of Staffs, all of them are traitors to our country and hate what our founders wanted. So it might be dangerous to have that type of a military in the streets guarding us, because they are not the healthy troops that we would desire. So if you had a more religious leaning, strong, maybe even dictatorial Putin, someone like Putin, I think that would be much better for a country than having an old sickly man who doesn't know where he is, smells kids' hair, and is protected by propaganda, leading our country into a spiral downfall. No nation will thrive under an unwise old man and a sickly old man, and then have a woman in there who is cold, won't visit the border, won't visit the children crying at the border, and who changes her tune depending on who she's in front of. You know, very highly dishonest actor, and who was not even good at her job in the beginning. And a military-based empire must be able to trust its troops to the point where if they were standing in the neighborhoods at a time of peace, we would respect their decisions to maintain law and order. But if they've been overrun by woke politics and globalized organizations, and our men have been feminized, and low testosterone troops are allowed in the ranks, well, now we can't trust them, because now they've all become perverted weaklings, and they're no longer the manufactured, fortified soldiers that we would want, right? They're not the Spartans. They're the unicorns running around with strap-ons, smacking each other in the face. So, reading Hamilton, man, it just really makes you think, as this video shows. Really makes you understand how what's been done to our soldiers is the perfect way to destroy a country. Destroy the men, destroy the military, rupture the minds of the women, and then install a leader who is the opposite of everything that your country stands for, and who is a career politician, who is out of touch with the real world, and whose son is an open crackhead. Hunter Biden is a crackhead. He is a crack addict, and knowing such a bad person is in the White House and his children are so degenerative and so disgusting, it really does something to the health and spirituality of the country. And that's how you know a country is on the way out, because the people tolerate such a horrible leader who has zero strength, zero morality, and where the liberals manipulate your emotions to feel sorry for him like a sad little grandpa eating Jell-O. We are a military country of strength. We don't need to feel sorry for our leader. Our leader needs to inspire us with strength and vigor and morality and virtue. And Biden doesn't do that. So, examine the works of Alexander Hamilton and his essays, and contemplate on all the different aspects that he has mentioned. I hope you enjoyed this video. a little bit more unique, but still very valuable.